called earlier, and it's been over like 20 minutes now, and no police or no ambulance have shown up. The reason why I'm asking them, because this the driver who caused the accident. I think he's impaired. Something's going on with him, and so the thing about we're trying to tell him is to turn his vehicle off from the smoking, and he's not following the command. So that's why I'm asking to see what if and he's moving his fear. He's going to drive off now. He's driving off. He's driving off. Take a picture of the driver license. Take a picture quick. So he's in a red Dakota. It's a 96 model, give or take 97 model. He's an older black gentleman, gray hair, blue shirt on, and front end damage. Heavily front end damage in front. Heavily front end. I knew he was going to do something. The lady in the Jeep was almost in the incident, so she turned around and she went after him. So she's going to take a picture of his vehicle and stuff. Can't you believe it? I knew he was something wrong with that guy. I knew it.
Told the jury she never pulled the trigger. Said the gun went off during a struggle. But then prosecutors played the 911 calls, and the entire courtroom went silent.
Can you get his tag number?
Hold on. He's driving away. Okay, so he is going west, down Clark House. No, I'm sorry, down Fort Parkway.
Okay, so you couldn't get a tag number?
No, but I'm catching up to him right now.
Okay, ma'am, we actually do not want you to chase him. We just want you to be safe. And it's
I understand.
To chase him.
What started as a minor traffic accident turned into a deadly confrontation that left one man dead and a 21-year-old woman facing life in prison. And the most disturbing part? Nearly every second of it was captured through calls, witnesses, police footage, and her own words. On May 7, 2019, in Clayton County, Georgia, Hannah Payne made a decision that would destroy 2 lives forever. After witnessing a hit-and-run crash, she chased a stranger for over a mile, blocked his truck in traffic, stepped out with a loaded gun, and moments later, 62-year-old Kenneth Herring was dying from a gunshot wound. Payne claimed it was self-defense. Prosecutors called it murder, and what the jury uncovered would shock the entire country.
You said he knocked the phone out of your hand.
Yes.
And then he grabbed you. You said one was on your wrist, and where was the other hand?
And originally he had just grabbed my wrist. And he had pulled me in the car, and at some point my shirt had gotten grabbed.
Okay.
And he was pulling my wrist, and he pulled me in the vehicle, and he kept yelling at me, telling me, "I have something for you."
At first, Hannah Payne believed she had done the right thing. Her defense team carefully built that image in court. A responsible young woman, a licensed gun owner, a concerned citizen trying to stop a dangerous driver from hurting someone else. According to her version of events, the shooting was never intentional. The gun fired during a struggle she didn't start. But prosecutors believed something completely different. And once the jury heard the recordings from that night, the entire case began to shift. Because before the shooting, before the police arrived, before the courtroom arguments, Hannah Payne had already told the story herself. It all began on the evening of May 7, 2019. Kenneth Herring, a 62-year-old man from Georgia, was driving his Dodge Dakota pickup truck through Clayton County near Interstate 285. By all accounts, it should have been an ordinary evening. But within seconds, everything spiraled out of control. Herring ran a red light and collided with an 18-wheeler on Clark Howell Highway. The crash itself was relatively minor. No one suffered major injuries. But witnesses immediately noticed something strange about Herring's behavior. One of the people who stopped at the scene was Terry Robinson, an off-duty Georgia Department of Corrections officer with medical experience. As he observed Herring pacing around the area, he noticed the man appeared disoriented and confused. His eyes looked reddish-orange. Robinson later testified he believed Herring could have been intoxicated or possibly experiencing diabetic shock, a serious medical emergency capable of causing confusion and irrational behavior.
Some of them may have like yellow eyes, glassy eyes of that nature stuff, or having a diabetic, a shock or something like that.
Now, are you currently post-certified?
Yes, I am.
And were you post-certified on May 7th of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, were you on duty on May 7th, 2019?
No, ma'am, I was off duty. That was one of my off days. I was off.
Another witness at the scene was Hannah Payne. At the time, Payne was just 21 years old and working in property management. Because her job sometimes required carrying cash and meeting strangers alone, she legally carried a handgun with a valid Georgia weapons permit. The two had never met before that night. But within the next hour, their lives would become permanently connected. Payne initially did what many people would do after witnessing a crash. She called 911 to report the accident and waited at the scene for officers to arrive. But police were delayed. Minutes passed, then nearly 20 minutes. And during that time, Herring suddenly got back into his damaged truck and started driving away. That moment changed everything. Robinson quickly called dispatch again, warning that something seemed seriously wrong with the driver. He described Herring as confused, unstable, and potentially dangerous behind the wheel. Meanwhile, Hannah Payne made a decision that prosecutors would later describe as the beginning of the crime itself. She got into her Jeep and followed him. The dispatcher immediately tried to stop her. The recording would later become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire trial. As Payne sped after Herring, the dispatcher repeatedly instructed her not to chase him, not to engage, not to pursue, not to put herself in danger. But Payne ignored every warning. Instead, she told dispatch she believed Herring was drunk and dangerous, and that she intended to continue following him until police arrived. At first, Payne claimed she only wanted his license plate number, but prosecutors later pointed out something critical. She already had the information police needed. She could have stopped. She could have returned to the scene. She could have waited safely for officers. Instead, she kept going. For nearly a mile, Payne stayed behind Herring's truck while still connected to 911 dispatch. Then she made another decision that would become central to the murder case. She cut him off. At the intersection of Riverdale Road and Forest Parkway, Payne used her Jeep to block Herring's vehicle and force him to stop. Then she stepped out holding a loaded firearm. Everything that happened over the next few seconds became the disputed core of the trial. According to Payne, she approached the truck trying to stop Herring from escaping. She claimed he suddenly grabbed her wrist, pulled her toward the vehicle, and threatened her. She later testified that she feared for her life as he dragged her beside the moving truck. Then came the gunshot. Payne insisted she never intentionally pulled the trigger. She claimed the weapon discharged while Herring struggled with her hand. But prosecutors argued the evidence told a far darker story, because immediately after the shooting, while Kenneth Herring lay bleeding inside his truck, Payne picked up the phone and said something investigators would never forget. "He pulled the trigger of my gun in my hand." And at that exact moment, the dispatcher answered with words that would echo through the courtroom years later. "Mom, you were not supposed to follow him." Those 7 words became devastating for the defense, because from that moment on, the prosecution focused on one central argument. Hannah Payne was not a victim trapped in a dangerous situation. She was the person who created it. Police arrived at the intersection within minutes. Witnesses immediately pointed officers toward Payne and identified her as the shooter. She handed over her firearm and tried explaining that Kenneth Herring had attacked her and caused the gun to fire during the struggle. Investigators documented scratches on her neck, redness on her wrist, and damage to her clothing. Payne claimed those injuries proved Herring had grabbed and dragged her beside the truck, but prosecutors questioned whether the physical evidence actually supported self-defense. Forensics showed Payne's DNA covered the handgun. Testing for Herring's DNA came back inconclusive. Investigators also examined the mechanics of the firearm itself, and detectives testified the gun contained safety features that made an accidental discharge during a struggle less likely. Then another major problem emerged for the defense. Toxicology reports showed Kenneth Herring had no drugs or alcohol in his system. That discovery shattered the prosecution's earlier suspicion that he had been drunk while driving. Instead, investigators began considering another possibility, that Herring may have been suffering from a medical emergency, possibly diabetic shock, which could explain his confusion and erratic behavior before the shooting. Still, Payne maintained she believed she was protecting the public. Years later, when the trial finally began in December 2023, the courtroom heard 5 days of emotional testimony, forensic analysis, 911 recordings, and eyewitness statements. Payne took the stand herself. She described feeling terrified during the confrontation and claimed Herring pulled her partially into the truck while threatening her. She told jurors she saw her life flashing before her eyes and feared she would be dragged down the road, but prosecutors attacked inconsistencies in her story. Witnesses testified Payne appeared aggressive before the shooting, yelling at Herring to get out of the vehicle. Others described her demeanor afterward as strangely calm and unemotional. And then the prosecution returned once again to the same critical fact. She chose to chase him. She chose to block his vehicle. She chose to approach him with a gun. Every step leading to the shooting, prosecutors argued, came from her own decisions. On December 12, 2023, the jury reached its verdict: guilty malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, or imprisonment, firearm charges. As the verdicts were read aloud, Hannah Payne lowered her head and cried in court. Days later, the judge sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus additional consecutive years for the remaining charges. She would not become eligible for parole for decades. Even now, the case continues to divide people online. Some believe Payne acted out of fear. Others believe she crossed a line the moment she decided to become the law herself. But regardless of where people stand, one reality remains impossible to ignore. A minor traffic accident escalated into a deadly shooting because one person refused to let it go. And in the end, the evidence that destroyed Hannah Payne's defense wasn't hidden forensic proof or secret surveillance footage. It was her own voice, recorded in real time, while everything fell apart. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more real courtroom cases, interrogations, and true crime breakdowns, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. And let me know in the comments, do you think this was self-defense, or did Hannah Payne go too far the moment she started the chase?